Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a licensed social worker interviewing social workers, and I'm so excited to be joined today by our guest, Miss Sojourner White. She is a remote social worker, a travel writer, a digital storyteller, and I'm just so glad you're here, Sojourner.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
I know I just gave a little bit of your spiel, but if you don't mind, will you kind of introduce yourself and what you do?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So my name is Sojourner. I use she, her pronouns. I guess my social work journey, technically, I study international social work. That was my initial plan. My bachelor's in psychology and Spanish. So I got into like international life and like I won a Fulbright fellowship to teach English abroad. So I was kind of exposed to the international working world. So I knew like international careers kind of became an option for me. And then I found my grad program. A few years later, a friend of a friend recommended. I'm like, girl, I'm not trying to be no social worker. Like, I don't know why you would do this. And then I went in and read kind of what the Brown School offered for like classes and degree programs, and having done work abroad, having done work in like the nonprofit girls education world when I was in AmeriCorps program called Public Allies, and like with Fulbright, I wanted to find something that connected the two, and international social work just kind of came up. So I was like, okay, well, let me Google it. I was in Google trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and that was in 2017. That was 2023. I'm a full-on social worker, graduated in May 2020. So I'm an early pandemic baby grad, and pivoted to remote social work due to the pandemic and being like, maybe now is not the time to go abroad. So it'll be 3 years in June at my current role since I graduated.
Very cool. Do you remember what it was that drew you to social work, like as you were researching and looking up what the options were?
Yeah, I feel like I had all the stereotypes I now make fun of people for having like on TikTok and stuff about social work. Like you watch the movies like CPS and foster care and therapy, and then I was just Googling like, what can you do with a social work degree? Like, what do social workers do? And I think I stumbled upon a woman, I think she went to Columbia, and she was doing like working in like tech. I'm like, not a social worker in tech. Like, right. What does that mean? So then I think because I saw all these non-traditional paths kind of pop up, it got me interested in, okay, so what actually can you do with this degree for real? And that's really what piqued my interest, because for me, if I was going to go back to school again, I wanted to make sure it was a degree that was as flexible as I am. I'm somebody who really loves doing more than one thing. And it seemed like with the social work degree, I could have my hands in a few things while having like a hard skill set that I can still pay the bills with at the same time.
Yeah, and I love that too, because it really is such a versatile field, and I feel like there's so many jobs that you wouldn't even imagine you could have until you see someone having it, and you're like, oh, we have the same degree.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was wild. And then when I found international social work, I'm like, okay, because the thing about I was considering international education, but because like being a Black woman and growing up in the US and then going abroad, and I was in a small town when I taught English, and like there was a lot of racial dynamics there. Like I got interested in how all this stuff plays out globally, because I had never experienced it outside of being a student. And then so I went to go live abroad. And so that's how I really kind of piqued my interest to figure out what area of international work I wanted to go in. 'Cause international affairs, I don't know about that. International like relations, I don't know about that. But like social work kind of rose as the one in between all of those for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think that social work, I feel like, has more to do with like a person's perspective of how the world works, instead of like, oh, the politics between countries or something. It's like, no, people's true lived experiences.
Yeah, literally, for sure.
That's awesome. Where was it that you were abroad doing Fulbright teaching English?
Yeah, so I studied abroad in Granada, Spain. Fell in love with it. I was 20. It was my first time outside the country.
I studied abroad in Malaga, Spain.
Oh,
so
nice.
like right there.
Stayed in their airport, traveling weekends. I stayed in Malaga all the time.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that's where I ended up, and then I loved it so much. I was actually on like I'm gonna my PhD path. Like that's what I thought I was gonna do, and then I studied abroad, and that went out the window. I was like, I'm not doing that. I'm taking a gap year.
Yeah.
And so I for Fulbright to go back to Spain, and then they put me in northern Spain in Logroño, so it's in their wine region called La Rioja, so it's not as touristy, which is fluent in Spanish now, because when you got to open a bank account, find an apartment, go grocery shopping, all in a second language, you're going to pick it up relatively quickly. Even though I've been studying since I was in 6th grade, I'm 28 now, so I'm like 9 or 10 years old. It wasn't as much conversation. So being in Fulbright and kind of being there for 10 months, 10, 11 months really helped me kind of propel my Spanish and then also get work experience abroad. Even though I was teaching English, which is not very difficult in my opinion, but still kind of hard when you're a native speaker. So that's where I was for a year, and then traveled, of course. Had my sisterhood of the traveling pants moment in Greece for spring break with my friends.
That's awesome. Love that.
All the good stuff.
Love that. I'd love to hear with your current social work job. Like, I know that you can do it from just about anywhere and that it's remote, but what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I always say remote social work is not really, like, it's a fake job title. Like, it's not really a thing you can Google. It's just how I can best describe what I do to people who have no idea what I'm actually talking about. So I actually work in evaluations work. So I do a lot of qualitative work. So interviews, workshops, focus groups. Like last week, I was in interviews all week talking to people for a
Welcome to a different kind of interview.
literally give interview time. So that is actually my day-to-day, I would say, for the most part. And then, of course, there's some report writing in there based off the evaluations that we do. I do some strategic planning as well, always kind of helping folks strategize, because I think, especially with evaluation, it's something that a lot of like grassroots orgs don't have the funds to do. Just because evaluation can be expensive. Like it is an expensive thing, and it's hard to have somebody in-house. So kind of where we come in, we're actually a group of consultants under one roof. So it's like I don't have to work. I'm like an independent consultant. I have health insurance and dental and all those good things, but we're all under one umbrella kind of doing this work. And that can be around all different kind of topics. I've done projects related to reproductive justice, entrepreneurship, in particular for Black entrepreneurs in the Midwest. We've had a lot of projects around that way. Like public health is always a thing that comes up, is related to like racism and how does that affect like a certain program and how they serve predominantly Black populations. I'm based in Milwaukee, and most of our team is here. So we do have some local projects as well as nationwide ones, and then one international project as well. So we're kind of all over, but I would say those are some of the major areas we work in. And it's cool because we get to kind of respond to proposals based off our interests as well. A lot of us, I'm the only social worker actually at my organization. People have backgrounds in like public health, political science at one point, urban education, education, like nonprofit man, like you have people of all different skill sets kind of coming together to do evaluation work with very different lived and personal experiences. So it makes it pretty enriching based on the projects that we do.
That's cool. So is it that you're partnering with organizations that have their own projects going on, and that's what you're helping to evaluate?
Yeah, so some of them have like more initiatives, like pilot programs, like a lot of the June 2020 things and like supporting Black people. There were a lot of like entrepreneurship programs that came out of that. So we've done evaluation of a few of those and seeing like how they can be sustainable, how they can help folks has been one thing. And just your regular program eval, like people like, we've been doing it for 50 years. We want to like evaluate it now. So we do more like run-of-the-mill, like regular ones too. But then we also have a lot of flexibility, innovation, because we specialize in storytelling evaluation. So figuring out how you tell the impact of a program beyond just like 15% of people did this, or 18% or 50% did that. Like, how do you actually talk to people? So we've really harnessed and I guess refined our virtual storytelling engagements, because I got hired in 2020. And so I've been virtual all 3 years, and we do fly and do in-person things every now and again, but really storytelling is like our bread and butter of figuring out how folks can better tell the story of their participants beyond just the numbers and stats.
That's so cool to hear about. And it stuck out to me how you mentioned how like your actual job title isn't social worker, and I think that's a common misconception that people think, oh, if I get a social work degree, I have to type into Indeed social work and see what comes up, whereas really if you have that degree, then no matter what you do, you're being a social worker in that job.
Essentially too, especially for me, I'm a very non-traditional macro remote social work. It's not going to pop up. Yes, I tell folks all the time, like being a non-traditional macro remote social worker, like my job title it's never going to be social worker. It's just not going to be. It's the degree I have, but I think due to the program I did and the skills I got, like I did take a program eval. Of course, I did do like a focus group, so I was in these spaces. I did like a policy program where I got to be like a policy scholar. So I got a bunch of these skills, and now I'm just choosing which one to use today. Essentially, even though it's grounded in evaluation, I feel like I still use a lot of the other skills, like what is it? Motivational interviewing. They use more for therapy. You actually use that a lot with clients and trying to get them through like a process and like encourage them, and like all those kind of things still come up even if it's not in your official title.
Yeah, that's so interesting to hear, because we get such a broad like toolbox, I guess, in school, because I also took the program evaluation policy classes, and then since I went more micro, it's like those skills still pop up in different ways. So it's interesting to hear that your micro clinical skills you learned still pop up even though you're more macro focused.
Yes, knowing how to talk to people in a therapeutic way, especially in the pandemic, in like a world like anti-Blackness, like and racism, like you do have to know how to talk to people, and that doesn't mean you're always like diagnosing them per se, but there is a way that like in my role in particular, I have to like build relationships and manage client relationships regardless if I'm direct service or micro or not. And so I think those interpersonal soft skills that a lot of social workers have are way more beneficial than many of us think.
And understanding like how people are coming into a room, like what they're coming into a room with, because you're going to get different information based on how you ask and how comfortable they feel. And it's very interesting to hear. So obviously there's then the whole other part, the Sojournies part of your life. Can you talk a bit about that and what else you get up to while you're working?
Yeah, I definitely make my way. So I started Sojournies when I was study abroad. You know, I was like, I'm going to have a study abroad blog. I blogged like 3 times. I think back in the day it was sojournies.weebly.com. Now I'm a WordPress girl, but I started it really just to share my experiences because I had never been abroad. I wanted to share with my family. Sojournies to like play on my name, so it fit perfectly. And what is it? I don't know how many years it's been, 7, 8 years, I can't count. But now it's 2023. It's a full-on business. I do social media content, and honestly, it's evolved with me. Like it started off study abroad. It started off with then me going and teaching English, and actually that's when I did my first travel writing for free for a website that talks about Black women's experiences in Spain. So I was doing that for free and kind of built up a portfolio unintentionally as a travel writer. It continued when I was in AmeriCorps. It continued when I was traveling in grad school and interning abroad in Berlin. So it's evolved with me, but right now my mission with it is really to help 9-to-5ers, you know, check off those career goals and bucket list dreams to find that freedom and flexibility outside the office. Like that's what I realized I was doing after all this time. It was like, yes, I want to work and I have all these passions and careers, and maybe one day I'll be a full-time influencer, but I want to figure out how I can do both and how I can enjoy my life and get paid, because in order to take the trips, I need to have income. So I use my 9-to-5 to make that happen. And it's been really fun. I get to do my own stuff on my website, and then I do a lot of freelance travel writing right now about like living in Milwaukee, which is so funny to me because I would have never thought I would be paid to write about Milwaukee. I've done stuff about train travel. I love taking the trains. I got into it in the pandemic, just not having many places to go, sans a vaccine initially. And so I took the train from Chicago to California, put it on my Instagram, TikTok, and all of a sudden I'm the train travel girl across social media. So it's a fun outlet. There is a level of like work that goes with it now, because I did write a remote social work kind of one-on-one guide to help other people in social work figure out what area they wanted to work in to possibly live a remote life. So that's been really cool, because I did not think I was going to be a social work travel influencer like that.
It's so multifaceted. Like just keep adding in things, right?
Like just keep adding stuff in. So it's been a nice addition to kind of a life that was already pretty fun and pretty abundant, and now I'm able to do more.
That's awesome. And there is something fulfilling about being able to not only have like the fun yourself, but then also help others, or like just using your experience, be like, and you can do it too, and this is how. Like.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's a level of like passport privilege, right, of being from the U.S. and all the things that come with that. And there's still a lot of people who can't at the same time, who have very similar privileges or lifestyles. And so trying to figure out how do we make it work for us, because not everybody can quit their job to travel the world. You know, it sounds great. It sounds cool. I have friends who've done it and it's been amazing, but that's not everybody's path. So trying to figure out how can I set up my life to maybe travel, you know, quarterly or, you know, more than that, or have a remote job and set up shop at a hostel for a few weeks in the winter time. This is normally my MO. So whatever works.
And there's a lot of creativity that goes into it too, which is fun. Very cool.
And oddly enough, interviewing people helps, because I interview for stories. So there's an overlap between my social work skills and my travel writing too now. When I do more journalism pieces, talking to people about their travel experience, I really lean on those open-ended questions that I create at work.
That's awesome. How many countries have you been to? Do you have a favorite? Like,
I'm at 19.
That's awesome.
Or 20, something around there. Something like 8 to 20 range, I think. Do I have a favorite? My favorite, I mean, I went to South Africa last year. And it was pretty great. It was a pretty great trip. I went with some friends, so I feel like that was one of my favorite girls trips I've ever been on. Just being in Johannesburg and Cape Town. Cape Town is gorgeous, like stunning.
That's awesome.
Beautiful city, like looks unreal. But I will say one of my favorite travel experiences was hiking volcano Acatenango in Guatemala.
Oh, cool.
I did it last year. It was like 6 hours uphill. Let me tell you, I was out of breath. Did not breathe with the altitude. I was like panting, but the porter stayed with me the whole time. I was the last person to make it, but I made it.
Right, and that's what counts.
And I got the view. But I would say it's probably one of my favorite travel experiences ever, because I'm never doing it again.
1 in 9, yeah.
And also, it was just like a once-in-a-lifetime thing to do. So it's probably my favorite travel experience. And Guatemala is not someplace I thought I'd ever visit, but kind of rose to my bucket list. And then I also did a hike where I ate pizza on the volcano, which is also really fun. Yeah. It was made on the volcano.
Oh, wow.
And then you eat. Yes.
Like cooked with the heat from the volcano, or?
Yeah, like the rocks.
Yeah.
Like the whole chef, his name is on Instagram, it's like Pizza Pacaya de David, and he's like a chef who him and his team bring their stuff up every day, and they make pizza. Like that's his livelihood.
So cool.
He makes pizzas on this volcano. So I would say Guatemala has had the most unique travel experiences, but South Africa was just a bucket list trip for sure.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear, because those are things you'd never even like think exist in the world. Like, why would you think there's pizza made on a volcano? And then when you get out to see more things, it's like, oh wow, of course, like, yeah, I'll eat this.
Literally, I went viral on Twitter for talking about it. Like, I just tweeted it one day, and next thing I know, people are like, I don't believe you. I'm like, well, why would I lie? Why? like you see the
How would I make that up?
Yeah, you see the video. I did not think it was a thing. Like, I saw it on TikTok and said, well, I'm going to Guatemala. And so that was part of the experience.
Yeah. How do you usually decide where to go? Like, do you have a list you follow, or just opportunities come up?
Yeah, it's kind of a mix. I feel like now I'm getting more like brand and partnership opportunities just through Sojournies, which is really cool to have. But I'm also like, I want a vacation for leisure as well. I know I travel for like writing purposes, but also I just want to relax. And so it really depends. I think right now I'm in the phase of deciding where are places that I can work remotely from, because we are very meeting based and collaborative. So there are still some time zone things I have to keep in mind. So I think about, okay, where do I want to work remotely from? Like, really the Western Hemisphere, I can work from this, like Canada, Central and South America, for the most part, I can work remotely from if I wanted to. But also there are places that I just want to travel to, I want to just go visit and experience without working, leave my life at home. Like, I don't want to do anything with it kind of situation. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. So I end up in Guatemala. So I realized they were in the same time zone. I'm like, well, I can go for like my last few days of work at the end of the year and then just stay and just explore the country too. So I think I'm more of that person. Like, I don't really spend more than a few weeks in one place, just because I also like to be at home. Because also I'm paying off student loans. I'm trying to save some money while also trying to travel at the same time. So
juggling a lot.
Have some balance. Gotta have some balance there. But right now I'm really into like the Western Hemisphere. I speak Spanish too, and because I went from no international travel to just Europe. Like a lot of my experiences were in Europe. So I can now take the time to be over here in the Western Hemisphere and kind of make my way through Central and South America is my current kind of goal, as well as like West Africa is another area I would love to do more trips in right now. Asia, maybe 2024. But like,
it's hard to get there. It takes a long time to get to Asia. Whereas Guatemala,
I'm staying for like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That flight, I'm staying.
Yeah, moving in. Switching gears a little bit, what do you remember about like your degree program whenever you were in school, and what's like some things you loved or were surprised about?
I think as someone who didn't get a BSW, I was just surprised at, again, the variation of social work. I think my school had like 8 concentrations or something, and I just didn't know all you could do. I think that was just really surprising to me as someone who wasn't immersed in it as an undergrad. It just really shocked me, like, oh, social workers are really out here. And then come to find out, once my mom told all of her friends and everybody's like, oh yeah, well, I'm a social worker. And then I was like, oh, well, I got all of y'all who've been around me all these years who I had no idea had social work degrees. So I think I was really surprised about how much I stereotyped it as a profession personally, and how much it was like actually there's more to it than I think I envisioned initially was one of the biggest things. I think the second thing that really surprised me was how I don't feel surprised, but learning about policy was really interesting to me as somebody who studied like theory for psychology. Like I like the human behavior stuff, I kind of understood and all of that, but the policy work in the policy class that we took, I think it was like social work policies and services, like my foundation course, like I had never really dug into that part of history before. My dad's a history teacher, so like he used to recite all kind of history to me as a kid, but having like this deep policy knowledge of how all these things work, I think really got me even more excited to do systems level work and understand how they're all connected, because I had never had the opportunity to dig that deep into, like, I think I studied like the Immigration Act of like 1965, and so I learned about so I was just, the amount of just contextual knowledge we get along with like the hard skills, like the combination, I think I really enjoyed in my experience. And I don't know why I was surprised, but like I still was, like when I was in it, and it made it really exciting, even though I was probably really tired back then. I think I still was very excited to really dig into all of to dig in and understand how everything worked across policies, international and in the U.S., and then also across like communities too.
That's really cool to hear. And yeah, that's something I've got, because I've worked alongside people with similar but different backgrounds, like mental health counseling. And I remember one time a coworker was like, why are you in a policy class? Like, what? And I was like, because it's important. Like, it changes everything.
Yeah, like mental health, work doesn't get funded because the policy's not there. Like, so it shows the interconnectedness in a way that facility dysfunction, we know, right?
Right. Like, and the historical context of who was included in this policy and who wasn't included in this policy. And like,
And then you have learned all the loopholes. Like, it was fascinating.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
That's super interesting. What advice would you have for prospective social workers or students?
Ooh, advice. One, I would say take classes outside of things that you may not think you need, because chances are you will. Like, I didn't take a strategic planning class, and I probably should. Like, it was an option once. I'm like, I'm tired. Like, I don't want to do it, which is a valid thing. Like, I understand rest. And it's also like, dang, girl, you really probably should have been up in there to learn something. So I would say if you have even like a little hint of interest in something, go for it, because it's one of the few spaces where you're able to do stuff like that. You're still in school, like you're getting, I guess we're kind of paying them to teach us at that point. But with all of that, you're able to kind of test stuff out. And I feel like that's something that you definitely don't get as much when you have a 9-to-5, unless you're in a space that prioritizes like on the job training and learning. So if you do have any interest, go for them. I will say maximize like all of those outside of class opportunities as well. Like, I taught a undergrad class around race and ethnicity. One of the semesters I was in grad school, I did like the policy scholar program, even though that wasn't my, like, I like area of focus for real. And so I feel like those were two experiences that really helped me in the long run, even though they weren't part of my degree program. So if you have any space to kind of pursue something, also trying to find paid things, pay us, it's also really nice. So again, if you have like the space and capacity, pursuing those experiences, even outside of social work, like the school itself. I studied social entrepreneurship with my program, so I had some business classes, and so it was cool kind of being in that space as well. And then finding balance, like don't stress yourself out, make sure you're eating and like working out and like prioritizing your like health. I think it's a big thing. I got into running when I was in grad school. I lived in St. Louis right by Forest Park, and so I ran like a half marathon because the park was huge. And so it gave me a goal to work towards outside of school and work that was just for me. That was just something that I could do, and I think it helped me find that balance in my very busy days to kind of give me something else to focus on.
Yeah, and that is so important to have something that's separate, because obviously like once you get your degree, you have it, but you have to make it to that point. Like you can't leave yourself behind somewhere.
Right.
Is that something that you find you have to work into your days now? How do you do that?
Yes, I'm still really big into working out. I got into it in undergrad, taking like fitness classes because they were like cool. And so then it kind of trickled over, and living by a park was nice. And even now I'm a 5 a.m. gym girly. So I will be in the gym in the morning before work. It's like my favorite time of the day. No one's awake. My email's not pinging. No one's sending me stuff on Instagram or TikTok. Like I can just kind of focus on something else, put on my headphones, they're noise canceling, and just be in my zone. And so I really do value that time, like those 2 hours just pure working out and just doing my own thing every day is something that I really love and enjoy and prioritize for sure.
That's awesome to hear. Who has inspired you like through your journey?
Oh my gosh, so many people. I think obviously like my parents, my mom especially, because I think she taught me what freedom and flexibility was outside the office before I knew what it was for myself. Like the way she's organized her life, she's like a urban farmer minister, so like she has a lot of things going on too. I think I get that from her. And like my dad and stepdad are both really passionate about the work that they do. So like in the community or like teaching, like I've always kind of been surrounded by people who are passionate and also found a way to do what they love and get paid for it at the same time. So I think those were like my first immediate influences. Obviously being named after Sojourner Truth is always like a heavy burden to bear. No pressure. So I think I'm always thinking about historical figures, especially Black historical figures who sacrificed a lot for me to be able to work from my room and work from different countries too. I don't take that lightly or take it for granted either. That a lot of what I have is because they fought for it. So I always keep that in mind. And then I think I'm really inspired by like my coworkers where I currently am. We're all very different. I feel like we all have our different experiences, and I learn from them on a daily basis about just random life things or work things or a new way to think. And I think that's a beautiful place to be in for work.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And very cool that your mom also had like a non-traditional kind of piecing together lots of things, because now you're a great example of that too.
Oh yeah, she was the blueprint for sure.
Yeah, and I am glad that like incoming social workers get to see journeys like yours where it's like, oh, I don't have to work for Child Protective Services if I don't want to. Like if I want to do anything, you can.
Yeah, and I think because of social work, like we're taught like you can't do this, you can't do that, but who's gonna stop you? Like if you have the skills, you know. And I tell folks all the time, focus more on your skills and your degree. Yes, you're a social worker, beautiful, love it, claim it. For all its successes and flaws, right? But at the same time, don't forget who you are outside of a title. Don't forget that you have all these skills that you can tap into that may not fit into a social worker box, but that doesn't negate that you have them, and they can pay your bills so you can travel or do whatever or just stay at home or do whatever you want to do with your free time.
Yeah, and the social work job doesn't have to be your whole life, your whole identity, because there's so much outside of that.
No, there's so much you can explore. And obviously, if you don't want to monetize your passions, you don't have to. You can do whatever you want, and you can find things to do that aren't, super work related outside, and so I think one of the biggest things I learned after undergrad was that I didn't have any hobbies. All my hobbies were attached to school, so I had to find new ones, just working out and photography. And so giving yourself that space once you graduate, that you may not have 100% right in grad school or even in undergrad, finding that space, I think, is really important to kind of find a better balance once you leave.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you so much for your insight and for sharing your journey. This has been awesome to hear. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to interview and tell us all about it.
No problem. Thank you for reaching out and having me.